Now, during the pandemic, taxpayers were provided with relief for the filing deadlines, allowed greater access to financial services, and offered ways to quickly resolve tax-related problems. Now that the worst is over, what other changes can we expect? Please put your hands together for Mr. Scott Curley, CEO of FinishLine Tax Solutions, as he addresses the topic, what to expect from the IRS in a post-COVID era. Thank you.
Well, thank you, the ladies. Again, I really enjoyed y'all's talk. It was really informative and much needed information. My topic is going to be like kind of what to expect in the coming years from the Internal Revenue Service now that we're exiting the pandemic. Just before we get into that, I'll give you a little brief rundown of who I am, what my company does, and we'll take it from there. My name is Scott Curley. I'm the CEO of a company called FinishLine Tax Solutions. We are a full-service tax resolutions firm. We help people all over the country. We have about 15,000 clients, and we help people all over the country who are having problems with the IRS. We just got honored this year by Inc. magazine by being acknowledged as one of the fastest growing companies in the country. So we started our company in 2016 with $2,000, and we do a little over 10 million. We did about $11 million last year, and we about double in size each year. So it's been a ride, to say the least. With that said, we have a lot of clients, obviously, who are experiencing problems with the IRS, and these past few years have been a bit quirky, to say the least. There's an old saying that there's only two things guaranteed in life, and that's death and taxes. Well, for the first time in this country's history over the past 2 years, that saying has been challenged because the IRS, during the COVID crisis, actually, for the first time in our country's history, slowed down and pulled back on their collection actions quite drastically. Roughly about 80%. Only about 20% of threatening notices, garnishment notices, notices of intent to levy, collection notices were sent out. And we felt that in our industry because obviously the less threatened a taxpayer who owes the IRS is, the less likely they're going to pick up the phone and ask for help. Because the propensity is to know that you have a problem with the IRS, but if they're not knocking or if they're not calling, then the propensity is to keep their head in the sand. And so we felt that as an industry, for the first time in this country's history, the IRS pulled back on their collections, and it's been like that for the past couple of years. Now, we consider that in this industry the quiet before the storm. What that means is, as we all know, that Congress has approved $80 billion in new funding to go toward the IRS. And the one and only purpose in doing that is to ramp up their collections so that the IRS can go out, can pursue and get more, and recoup those monies that are owed to the government. And at this point in time in our country's history, the government needs that money more than ever. One of the main reasons for that is obviously because over the past couple of years, our government gave away billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, and arguably even into the trillions in the form of PPP loans and stimulus payments, credits, things like that. And there are arguments that a lot of this money that was given was money that we did not have, which contributes, arguably, to the inflation matters and issues that we're experiencing today. So the government, just to kind of give you a little 101 of how this kind of transpired, our Congress had to make a decision, a tough decision. Are they going to raise taxes to try to recoup some of these monies that was given, again, in the form of stimulus payments, PPP loans, and things like that? Or are they going to go after the money that's already owed to the government, which is in the form of unpaid taxes? So they chose the latter, and by doing that, they the Congress approved an $80 billion stipend that will be allotted to building up and ramping up and revitalizing the collections division of the IRS, so if you will. Now, the ladies right before us made a very good point on that I'll kind of expound on. When right now, the IRS is, again, I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I started in sales, and I was always so fascinated by the industry because it's the only industry in which the sense, especially from a sales perspective, where the sense of urgency is already created by the United States government. Most other sales jobs per se, sale ends today. Sale ends at midnight. You know, get the car before midnight, sale ends at night. Well, the IRS sends out these threatening notices where take action, or they send out something called a final notice of intent to levy, meaning that the IRS, within that certain period, the IRS makes it very clear, and these notices come through a system that's referred to as ACS, Automated Collection Systems. The operative word is automated. So what that means is, it's not a human being that's issuing these directives, it's a computer system. The IRS can do a lot of things to us, but there's two things that they won't do, they can't do. They don't discriminate, and they don't bluff. They do what they say they're going to do, and they do it when they say they're going to do it. So when you get a notice of intent to levy stating that you have 10 days to take action and to pay this $30,000 liability, or the government, the United States government, is going to take action to collect those funds, then that's going to happen. You know, that's, and the good news, and I tell all of my clients, we're the 4th largest tax resolutions firm in the country. We're the largest Black-owned tax resolutions firm in the country. We tell our clients, we have thousands of them. We tell our clients all the time. The good news is that the IRS is very predictable. The bad news is that the IRS is very predictable, you know, and so it works both ways. So we use that knowledge as a litigation firm to help our clients, because we know what the steps are, because it's not being determined by human beings, it's being determined by a computer system. I deviated a little bit, but that's important, because getting back to what Congress has done to revitalize the collections efforts is something that is going to or could possibly impact all of us in one way or another. As the ladies before me were mentioning, there's going to be an influx. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a 10-year process of new, fresh blood. Okay, the IRS is kind of like I was about to get to earlier, and I'm a little ADD, so I got sidetracked. The IRS, employees at the IRS are kind of like bus drivers, city bus drivers. And I say that because the city bus drivers, I know over the years, you know, our family, friends, it's the type of job when you go, you stay there forever. Bus drivers, city bus drivers tend to stay driving that bus for decades. IRS is a very similar type organization. They have revenue officers and they have frontline agents who have been there for decades. It's just that type of culture. Now, the plan is to hire 87,000 new agents over the next 10 years. Now, I understand it's been a political hot button, you know, depending on what side of the aisle you lean towards, and I will not get into that. But the fact is, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over a 10-year period. But what's important to understand is that as the old timers are leaving and retiring, because over the next 5 years, there's an estimation of over 50,000 agents retiring. Now, understand this: the ones that are leaving are not going to be replaced by middle-aged folks. They're going to be replaced by young people right out of college who don't have much experience, but they have a lot of ambition. So keep in mind that it can be fully expected, and I do want to clarify that this is an educated opinion based on my years of experience in this industry. So it's not necessary, it could be debated, but my belief is that as these older, more seasoned agents retire and move on to pasture, so to speak, this 87,000 over a 10-year period, they're going to be replaced by young, energetic, aggressive, young adults who want to make a name for themselves, who rightfully so, and who want to do a good job, and who very may likely be a bit zealous in doing so. So what does that equate to? What's that look like? Well, when a case gets referred to a revenue officer, then the revenue officer now may be a 26-year-old graduate from college who is determined to do his or her job well, efficiently, and aggressively. So what we should expect and be prepared for is a much more aggressive IRS over the next several years, over the next 10 years and beyond. That I think that's a fair. I think it's just common sense to expect that, because if that was not going to happen, if that was not part of the plan, then why would all of the monies be allocated to the IRS in the first place? So we tell our clients quite often that, you know, it's always better to be proactive, and if you know that you have an issue, that you deal with it proactively so that the matter can be resolved with you still maintaining some degree of control over it. The worst thing that could happen, and we deal with it so often, you know, when people have IRS problems, and again, this is coming from a guy who's been in this industry, tax resolution, for 20 years and been in this capacity for about a decade, and like I said, FinishLine has about 15,000 clients, and the vast majority of them, they waited until the IRS took aggressive action against them before they finally realized that the matter was real and serious. So the whole point of this talk and conversation is to, first of all, there's a saying that I learned a long time ago, to be aware is to be alive. You know, so I think it's important that we be aware and we be cognizant and we expect the IRS's culture to change. And as we do that, especially, well, not only individuals but business owners, to adjust our mindset so that we can be prepared as this occurs. It's dealing with an IRS problem is it's very easy to get into that trouble, but it's very difficult to get out. As money folks know, you guys are, you know, financial professionals. I will not claim to be that. I'm at my core a sales and marketing guy. At the end of the day, I have no letters behind my name. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I do have them working for our company, but I know none of that. But I am smart enough to know to put smart people around me. So I know that much. So with that said, I think it's very important that as the IRS begins to shift in its culture, that we pivot and shift our mindset as well. Business owners, payroll tax matters, which, as you may know, are some of the most the type of tax problem that the IRS tends to frown upon most sternly, I guess I should say, because they look at it as though the business owner has, I hate to use this word, but stolen from the employee and the government. They pull monies from the employer and you know, I tell you, during the COVID epidemic, we had hundreds of small business owners, you know, barbershops, Uber drivers, you know, 1099 folks, are, you know, little mom and pops where they're just trying to keep doors open, small restaurants. And when they have 3 or 4 employees and they have pulled those payroll taxes, you know, the responsibility is to put those monies into a trust, and of course remit those to the IRS in the form of payroll taxes. Well, when you have to decide whether or not to leave the lights on to keep your business open, and you have this money here that you know is not yours, then it's a little tempting to use it and to borrow from that fund with the mindset that, you know what, I'll give it back in a couple of months when things get better. The problem with that we saw, so especially during the COVID crisis, is that getting better moment didn't come. And then, of course, with that point, then you're not only dealing with a struggling business, but you're dealing with a payroll tax matter with the IRS. And it just compounds and gets worse. So the whole point in this is that as we move into the next stage of how the IRS operates, it's important that we keep that we understand and we expect them to operate in a more aggressive manner. And as long as we know what to expect and we know how to protect ourselves in the process. People ask me often, what can I do to stay out of trouble with the IRS? My first answer, hands down, and again, I'm not a practitioner. I don't know the difference between a W-9 and a W-4, W-2. But I do tell my clients this, so I have my employees that do know that stuff. We file your tax returns and file them on time. It is not a crime to owe the government money unless there's fraud involved. But it is a federal crime to not file your tax returns. We don't hear about, you don't hear about John 2 houses down that got into serious trouble with the IRS and eventually got a tax evasion case filed. In 2021, and if I remember this correctly, there were almost 1,000 people who were convicted of tax evasion. Normal folks like you and me. Now we don't hear about it because nobody talks about that. If their best friend, they're not going to talk about that. We hear about the celebrities who find themselves in those situations. But it all starts with not filing the tax return. If you file your tax returns, even if you owe, because we get this a lot, I'll tell you, we get a lot of people who say, well, I don't want to file because I know I'm going to owe, and I'm going to owe a lot of money, so I don't want to file. Well, that's the worst thing you can do. You need to file, even if you know you're going to owe $100,000, file, because what you've done when you file, you remove the criminal element from the equation, and you give yourself, you open the pathway for a resolution that you can live with. I mean, that can be achieved or obtained rather. Here's something that a lot of people don't understand. I mean, they may not know about the IRS. It's interesting, and I'm sure the legal minds in here that are way smarter than I, I'm sure you do know this. By law, the IRS cannot create a financial hardship when collecting a tax debt. And when I think about it, I'm like, whoa, well, why do we have to pay taxes? That's a hardship. But now the catch to that is that the IRS is the entity that determines what a financial hardship is. So it's sort of an oxymoron. But in my world and what we do, obviously, once we get people caught up and current on their tax returns, then we can explore resolutions options that are within their ability to pay, that does not create a financial hardship, that keeps them protected from garnishments, levies, liens, and asset seizures, and allows them to, and ultimately satisfies the IRS at the same time. Now, and with that said, that's the true definition of resolution, by the way. We see so many commercials in my industry. I can proudly say that FinishLine Tax Solutions does not run commercials that say, if you owe over $10,000, call us today and we'll get it reduced down to less than $200. We don't do that because that's not the definition of resolution anyway. It's not about what you save, it's about what you don't lose at the end of the day. What's more important, saving a few $1,000s on the front end if you owe, or ensuring that your livelihood and your assets and your income is protected and intact on the back end? Having an IRS problem is very similar to having an aggressive illness that has no cure. And I won't mention any particular illnesses because we're all touched by somebody, us or someone in our family who may have experienced this. But if we have an aggressive illness, the best way to treat that is to address it aggressively, immediately, and the chances of going into remission are much higher. So when we get with FinishLine, when we work to get our clients' tax matters resolved, we don't tell them that you're not going to owe anything, because they still will. Are you going to save money? Probably not. You know, you got to pay taxes. But can we alleviate, but can we get you set up on a plan that you can live with and that satisfies the IRS and keeps you protected? Yes, that's our goal. It's kind of like getting your tax matter into remission. When our clients could reach out to us, they're in full-blown financial cancer. Once we release them once we release them from our services, their financial cancer is now in remission. Doesn't mean that they don't have a tax, it means that they still have a tax matter, but they do not have a tax crisis, if that makes sense. So, I know I'm deviating, I'm just kind of rambling. Just expect the IRS to be much more aggressive, and especially for those of us who are small business owners, take that very seriously. I'm probably one of the worst money managers that I know, and one thing that has helped us, we started our company in 2016 with $2,000 and nothing, literally nothing. I was almost not homeless. I'm writing a book about it. Matter of fact, it comes out in February. I was homeless, and over that 6-year period, we grew it. We turned $2,000 into $35 million, and by doing that, but in that process, there was a lot of money management that had to occur. And so one thing that helped me so much was to stay in my lane and to get someone to do what I didn't know how to do. And that's something I encourage anyone to do if you know that especially if you're running a business and your business is flourishing and you're passionate about it and you have big visions and dreams for your business, but you're not so great with managing the money, then find a professional to do it. Our mistake our first year, I will tell you that we did not do that. We had no money. The way we grew our company was that we forged and leveraged strategic relationships, but we did not know how to manage money. And had it not been for us snapping out of our stinking thinking, then we could have found ourselves in a very tough situation right now. But we did, so because when you're broke and you're trying to build a business, you just start thinking, well, we can do that ourselves. We don't need to hire a bookkeeper to go do that. That could cost $100 an hour. But it could cost $100,000 if you don't do it. So thank God we snapped out of our stinking thinking and we got someone to start managing that for us, and that has been one of our saving graces. Does anyone have any questions about tax resolution, tax matters, not code questions, because I can't answer that. I'm not a practitioner. But just general questions that maybe I can help answer? Okay. I'm not going to sit up here and just ramble because there's still time left. That's not what I'm going to do. The whole point in my talk with you guys was just to share with you what to expect in the coming years from the IRS. The landscape will be different. It will be more aggressive. They're not the enemy. You know, that's one thing that I tell all of us. I mean, if we have to, thank God we're in a country that where we have the privilege to pay taxes. What kind of country would it be if we didn't? You know, so they're not the enemy. They're just simply, doing what they need to do. So, but at the same time, minimize your risk by keeping your level of consciousness in line with their level of aggressiveness. So, with that said, I'll wrap it up about 20 minutes early, and it was nice talking to you guys.